This is Afghanistan, and this is China. In a world map, it may look like they are distant nations, which is to be frank is true, but if you look closer, they share a very tiny border here. So how did this happen? We'll look at both countries first. You know too much about China already, you can't watch this video without a VPN in China, it's huge, and so on. Afghanistan is obviously different, sharing very little with the Chinese. Most Afghans are Muslims, it's quite dangerous, and the US has troops here. Let's look at the border itself. The border spans across the Wakir Pass, starting at the tri-point with Tajikistan until reaching the Pakistani-administered Kashmir point. The border is further separated from the rest of Afghanistan by the Wakhan Corridor, which is about 350 kilometers long and 13 to 65 kilometers wide. What makes this more intriguing is its geography, as this is one of the most remote areas in Eurasia. The Wakhan Corridor is wedged between the Pamir Mountains to the north and the Karakoram mountain range to the south. From this high mountain valley, the Panj and the Pamir rivers emerge and form the Amu Darya. Even more, if you step across the border from Afghanistan to China, you need to adjust your clock by a whopping 3.5 hours. This is mainly because China has only one time zone, directly centered in Beijing, for national unity. It is so remote that only 12,000 people live in this area. Most are Pamiri and Wakhi peoples, but this gives us a question. Why this very remote area is part of Afghanistan instead of, let's say, Tajikistan or Pakistani administered Kashmir? History is the key. Long before the borders were drawn, the general area where the Wakhan Corridor now belongs to was a major trade route in the famous Silk Road, interlinking Eurasian trade. Many Western explorers also crossed through here and rode to China. The area was so remote that politically the area was very vague until one day, the Great Game happened. The Great Game happened around the 19th century between the pesky British Empire and the expansionist Russian Empire. Britain feared that its Indian colonies is at risk of being threatened by the growing Russian influence in Central Asia. Then we have a third wheeler, Afghanistan, an independent country. Afghanistan fought hard against Britain, but it lost and it never got colonized. The main reason? Expanding British borders into Afghanistan will immediately confront the Russian Empire directly, and a war between two is very likely. To prevent this, the British and Russians agreed to keep Afghanistan independent and to have it as a buffer state. The border between Afghanistan and the British Raj is known as the Grand Line. The border between Afghanistan and the Russian Empire, on the other hand, was established by an agreement between the empires in 1873, effectively split the historic region of Wakhan by making the Panj and the Pamir rivers the border. Things were alright until we reached the Wakhan area. As mentioned, this area is so isolated that even Afghanistan has little control in it. But this would also create problems as Russia and Britain would directly border each other. As a compromise, a corridor was given to Afghanistan, which was the aforementioned Wakhan Corridor, for Britain and Russia to not border each other. It just so happens that to the end of the corridor, it puts in a direct border with Qing China. As you all know, empires collapse and new nations are born. Those nations simply inherited the territories or the borders drawn by the imperialists in the past, and the Wakhan Corridor is to be kept Afghan, and it continues to border China until now.
Does it matter?
Obviously, yes, it is some of the most unique borders in the planet, puts you ahead of 3.5 hours, and it also lies in some of the most isolated places on Earth. Another reason is geopolitics. You see, China has been expanding influence throughout Eurasia through the Belt and Road Initiative. There is currently no road connection between China and Afghanistan. China already connected its road network with Pakistan, and of course it will be glad to do the same thing with Afghanistan. Having a full connection, though, will allow for easier trade between Central Asia in favor of China. But it will also complicate stuff, especially with already strained relations with the US and India. Plus the fact that this area is very isolated and the country it will connect to is some of the most dangerous in the world. Yes, this piece of isolated corridor is such of a massive importance in terms of geopolitics. It may not seem obvious, but if you examine the map thoroughly, you will be able to find some border anomalies, and the Afghan-Chinese border is one of them. To summarize, this happens because of the imperialistic agreements between Russia and Britain in the height of the Great Game to prevent conflict. The borders drawn by the imperialists are inherited by the nations that form along with it, and they have to deal with it. However, not giving Afghanistan the corridor makes the conflict between Russia and Britain more likely, and things are not going to be bright. Also, the time zone feature will be lost. Today is a different time though, and the corridor has gained more strategic importance. In the end, the Afghan-Chinese border will always be one of the most interesting border points in the world. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more country neighbors, please.